All right. Hello, hello. I'm just checking that audio is working. If anybody is on Twitch right now, can you just send me a message and make sure that my audio is coming through? It shows that it is, so I'm pretty confident in it. But welcome to the August Rust Gamedev Meetup. And to be honest, I'm surprised that the screen is actually showing properly right now. I think I set it up to be Chrome properly. But anyways, we got the presentation up and running. Awesome. So this is a meetup that I've run for the last few months. My name is Forrest. I work on a game in Rust called Valorant, and I do a lot of other stuff around. So I'm part of like the Rust Gamedev podcast. I also help edit the Rust Gamedev newsletter every month. But this meetup is an opportunity for people in the Rust language who are working on game development projects to come and show off what they're doing, show off what kind of stuff they'll be working on in the next month, and kind of meet with other people. And overall, we get some like really cool stuff that comes out from month to month. And so uh, I've been trying to pick the time to update the visuals here a little bit more. It's just a normal Google Slides presentation, but I actually have a issue on the Rust working group right now about creating a showcase of Rust games, and I think that would be super cool to have at the beginning of the meetup. So if you want to like comment on that or add some ideas or anything like that, if you go to, well, I'll post the repo in chat later, but if you want to go take a look and comment on maybe like the execution of it, that would be a pretty cool thing to get going for next month maybe. But anyways, I digress. Today we are here to see what people have today and now. And so we're going to start out with a show and tell. After that, we're going to go through some announcements. We got several this month that are pretty exciting, I think. And then if you want, you can hop on the Discord afterwards and hang out with some of the people who gave the presentations or who are working on these different things in the community. And so without further ado, we'll hop right into the schedule. All right. So first up, we have Kvark here, who's going to be talking to us about wgpu. And Kvark, I just want you to say something so I can see that as we're picking up.
Hi, I'm Dmitry.
Okay, perfect. So let me just go back to here, and I'm going to mute myself, and you are good to go.
All right. This is just a small update. Last time I talked about how we are rewriting the graphics structure from GFX into the GPU's own hardware abstraction layer, and this is about new made. I'll just keep this boys example running. So we had the idea back in the day that writing graphics code in Rust should be good. It should be performant and a pleasure to write and stable. And we were chopping through this years, and we were trying to do a complete pure Rust stack for graphics. And now we are approaching the final stage of it. Final bastion here is D3D12 with the HLSL shaders. So the update today.
I'm listening on Twitch and I'm getting a little bit of interesting stuff. I'm going to try this new technique that I learned right before the meetup, which is called pipe wire, and it lets me do some funky stuff here. But what I want to do is pipe Discord. What is it? WebRTC output. I think like this. I'm gonna mute this one. And Kvar, can you just say something?
Yep.
Okay, so it looks like it's passing through. So I'm just gonna mute my mic on this end, and I'm gonna listen back on Twitch. So just do like another 20 seconds, and I'll come back if there's an issue.
Okay. So we have a rewritten D3D12 backend for wgpu, and one of the core pieces of it is that the shader infrastructure works through Naga, which is the pure Rust implementation for shader translation. That means that currently wgpu master does not depend on any C libraries like SPRV Cross. It's a pure Rust stack, and it's very, very experimental because we haven't used HLSL produced shaders before in wgpu with the Rust stack, and now we do. So everything here is like mostly new code, and we are running the existing examples on wgpu on D312 with decent performance. This is the voids example. We can also run the shadow. All of the examples run. You can resize the window. You can see stuff animated. We are basically wrapping up the whole thing for 0.10 release, which will feature the new graphics substructure layer and the HLSL generated shaders and everything. The entirely new WGPU, one could say. I'm excited to have this path ready, and I'm very happy to have no C dependencies. The other thing I wanted to show you is my own project called Vangers, which is a remake of an old game. And I'm using it to test the latest WGPU before releasing. So here we are running it on D3D12, again, in a pure Rust stack. You can see there is some frame pacing issues in general, but the rendering itself is correct and it matches the other backends. So the application is fully portable. I can switch the backends at the initialization time and get the same behavior. This is rendering like several million small cubes as a voxel engine, which I'm traversing. Also, I'm just, for the experiment, I enabled the output of the shaders that we generate. So you can see all the HLSL code that we do, and we have it all nicely validated in Naga itself, which has a lot of tests now. And it works, it behaves the same as our SPRV and metal generated shaders. So if anyone wants to try D312 on Windows, and the reason for it would be that D312 is better supported than Vulkan on Windows, on more hardware, and the tools are better, then you're welcome to. And the next release hopefully happens next week. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Right, I think I'm back. It looks like it's picking up my audio. So yeah, I think it's always super cool to see what's going on in the WGPU universe and everything like that. I do sort of wonder, now that you've been bringing a lot more into the Rust ecosystem, what are some of, I mean, like just across the entire WGPU ecosystem, or just anything at all, what are some of the biggest improvements or like surprises that you've seen while working internally in this ecosystem?
The biggest productivity thing for me is the API tracing infrastructure that we have. Basically, any application of WGPU, including the browsers or Deno JavaScript runtime, or any user application via wgpu RS, or any native application using the C bindings, anything can just flip a pref and record an API trace that I can then, as a developer, replay on any machine and see what's going on. So that's both the biggest productivity thing and the surprise in terms of how efficient it is.
Interesting. Yeah, that's super cool, and I think a lot of people are probably excited for the release next week. And I know we're using a decent amount of it with Valoran, of like just a wgpu stack, and so I think being able to branch out further is always very cool. So yeah, thank you for the update. That was awesome.
Thank you.
All right, so next up, we have Elias, who is going to give us an update after a few months on where Dotrix has been.
Yeah, thank you very much. We've been working on Dotrix 0.4, and in the end, this release never will get out. We will jump to release 0.5, and because during our development of the terrain, we found that we have a huge limitation on rendering pipelines, and because of this, we decided to rewrite it completely. And it took some time, of course, but the results are really nice. We really like them. Now you can see terrain generator and renderer as well, built on new pipelines, running on Intel Iris GPU on MacBook Pro with 60 FPS, like the maximum that this video card gives. And I will give some short introduction about the terrain itself, because you can see it. This is height map based terrain, textured with single texture, and each color level is just a setting, additional setting that has color, has level above the 0, and it just changes the color of the texture itself. So in the end, it looks like this. We found that we were not able to pass this data to the shader in some human-friendly way, and that was one of the main reasons we decided to go with pipelines change right now. And now I will do something that I hate to do, because I really hate when someone does it, but I will show you the code. And not because I want you to read the code, but I want you only to show the side of code. These lines are enough to start to implement some totally new pipeline. You don't need to define pipeline layout and then bind it and that much stuff. You just do it once like this, define what kind of shader you want, what kind of mesh there will be, define bindings in this way, and you should do it, of course, just once, and then just run the rendering, and that's it. This piece of code is responsible for PPR modeling with skeletal animation, which actually works. You can, if we do the trick, there is a model. Animated, running. And similar to this, we implemented several other ways of rendering. It is, of course, Skybox that you also see on this example. There is overlay. You can see it from FPS counter. It is here. And there are some more stuff. It's also for terrain. There is a standalone pipeline with own configuration, all own attachments, own uniforms. And that's this is the biggest change that will be in Dotrix 0.5, but not the only change. In addition to this, we did some changes to application initialization, and you can see it here. If maybe you tried Dotrix before, or just trust me, before you need to define all the standard Dotrix systems, services, and services in the main procedure. Now it is all done by application method. You have application prepared for 3D game or 3D application. In addition to this, we've added extensions. You don't need to define all of the systems, all of the services that some extension need, but it is enough to just use such a syntax. Skybox, for example, is a module, and extension is a function that will do all the magic inside. It's also good for portability, because if in the future some new system will be added to Skybox, for example, there will be no need to make changes in your application. Also, as long as we are here, we did a major change to systems. One of the changes is prioritization. Before, systems were running in the order you create them, and now you can you can control this. For example, for the Skybox, for example, for the I'm sorry, not a Skybox, but maybe for Skybox too. Yes, Skybox is important to be rendered first, but it is done in a little bit other way. But definitely for the overlay, it is important that overlay is rendered in the end. And to achieve this, we can set the priority of the system, and it doesn't matter at which point it was added. So as you can see here, we can add Skybox after the overlay, and you still have correct picture. Overlay is always on the top. Also, we did some tricky change to systems run levels. Run level defines when your system will work. There are several run levels, and the amount of them were extended in this update. Before, you always had to define run level like this. Now run level can be automatically detected from the system name. So for startup systems, and usually you have just one startup system for a module, the run level will be startup, so it will be called only once when the application just starts. And this is the same for all other run levels. Also, we did some changes to components. The number of components were extended. For example, we added a cube map component. We changed the light component. Before, for each light type, we had own component. Now it's one component for any types. Works like enumeration, and it gives better performance on ECS queries, and slightly easy to read and to work with. We shrink model component to very simple one, removing transformation, rendering features to standalone components. Now, pipeline component is responsible for rendering stuff, and we introduced material component that is responsible for texturing, coloring, and stuff. Also, there is a new pose component which is used for skeletal animation, and the transform component, which is obviously for transformation. And I think this is pretty it of what is coming in the next release. We are working now on some small stuff, on little bit, some little change in ECS system, and on documentation. As soon as we finish it, we will release it. And that's it.
Right. Very cool to see these updates. One question that was asked on Twitch, when you're talking about the pipeline, someone asked, does this generate shader code or something? And I'm sort of want to like add on to this a little bit, where like when you have access to the pipeline like this and you can really make these changes and stuff, it really lets you see inside like what would be very very deep inside an engine or something like that. And so what's sort of like the either the idea of how people will use it, or like what kind of magic does it abstract away for you?
Okay, thank you for the question. No, it doesn't generate shader. Of course, shader should be passed separately. For example, here is the property to set proper shader, and we use we start using wgpu shading language, or how it is called, VJSL, starting from this update. And let me show you, for example, this skybox shader. Here it is. And this is the thing that you should control manually, at least at this moment, the order of input the order of input variables, the layout of bind groups. So if you write a shader and then you write a pipeline, these things should simply match, and this will do. The order of all the indexes of bind groups and entries are defined by the order you set them in the array here. And layout of vertex attributes, like here, or some more complicated example like here, is defined by the way how you pack your mesh.
I see. Interesting. This is yeah, very cool. And we have another one from Kvark asking, or I mean, more of just like a comment, but it'd be really cool to see like a comparison about the APIs of like Dotrix, Bevy, and other engines, just to see like how their code looks against one another. And so, I think like WebDev has this idea that any framework like there's like a standard thing that anything can implement, so you can kind of see what it looks like and everything else. But yeah, I think it'd be very cool to kind of, yeah, either see how Dotrix stacks up, or just like how things are done differently between the different crates.
just to be sure, the question is what is the difference between Dotrix and other engines?
Well, sort of just a comment on like if you were able to make a project in all three of them that was the same project but just coded differently for each of them, it would be cool as a user to be able to see that. So not sort of a question, but more of just a comment.
Okay, I will try to answer. I started my Rust Gamedev journey with Amethyst engine. Then I gave a try to Bevy, and after this, I decided to try to write something my own. Partially, I was inspired by Bevy syntax, but since I started working on Dotrix, I stopped following updates of other engines, so I don't know what is now there. But at the point when I started, Amethyst seemed for me too complicated. You need to write a lot of code to achieve your goal. For Breve, it was much better, but there was another problem. There was a lack of features for 3D games, and I gave a try to implement skeletal animation for Bevy, and I gave up after my pull request got totally incompatible with some update, and even I tried to coordinate the development process with other developers. It was too complicated, and I spoke to our guys in our team, and we decided to go with our own engine. So, in compared to Bevy, Bevy was nice, and Bevy is the closest engine to Dotrix, or vice versa, in sense of syntax, in sense of architecture, but I still think that Dotrix is a little bit easier to use, and we have some features like the skeletal animation, like the skybox. I don't know if it is in Bevy already, but some time ago there was nothing like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's always awesome to see some different ways of doing it in the community with these, yeah, different game engines and approaching it in different ways and stuff like that. And so I'm super excited to see where Dotrix goes in the next few months.
Thank you.
right, so next up we have Kevin and True Doctor here to tell us about what's been going on with Graphite.
Yes. So we've had a very important month for going towards our release date of basically this month. So let's get started with some updates. Before we do that, I want to quickly give an overview of what is Graphite if you are just tuning in to the project. Graphite is a concept for an open source graphics editor for 2D graphics. And basically that would mean a replacement for Photoshop and GIMP if you do raster-based graphics, and Illustrator or Inkscape if you do vector-based graphics. Currently that is our focus as we eventually will get to raster graphics. And also the entire thing is meant to be completely based upon a node-based non-destructive backend. So as a result, all the changes that you do are able to be put into a node graph and modified after you've made them, which is a big revolution over traditional pixel-based destructive workflows that you're used to with GIMP or Photoshop, or destructive vector-based editing where you simply edit some Bezier curves and you end up not being able to go back and make changes to them. Additionally, for the Rust community, the interesting aspect of Graphite is that the node-based system is actually basically a pure functional programming language where you can have, as a visual programming language, where you can write Rust functions and then string them together with nodes. And you can actually use that for the purpose of creating different pipelines and basically being able to string together your own custom functions and deploy them in different use cases. And that's more focused on graphics, but you can kind of use it for anything. So a quick experimental preview before we begin with the rest of the updates is we wanted to show some collaborative editing that we've been working on. This is pretty experimental, but it is a concept that should come to fruition within some time in the future. So this is based upon about a month-old build, but it is because it is a branch on its own. But I'm going to start drawing, and the True Doctor is going to be able to start. Ooh, there we go. And True Doctor can start editing while we watch.
Yeah, I just got fed up with Kevin always having the screen share, and then I can also influence the kind of presentation. This whole collaborative editing is really cheap for us because we have a couple of meetups ago, I presented the messaging system, and what we basically do is that we just take the input messages and route them through our WebSocket server and redistribute the front-end responses. So we just intercept the communication between the front-end and the Graphite Rust backend and broadcast it to all recipients. So this is a very cheap and dirty way of implementing collaborative editing, courtesy of our architecture. It's really nice just as a thing going forward. And this whole thing took like a day to implement. It's really promising for what we're trying to do in the future.
Yeah, and this will be one of the first class features in the future. This is a very quick proof of concept, but we will be dealing with the way that latency works. So you can draw quickly on your local client, and then that shows up, of course, with latency only for the people who aren't on your own network connection. But yeah, that is a preview of this cool feature that is to come. So back to the presentation. Next, we have a huge bunch of updates this month. We've been racing towards completion for releasing Graphite 0.1 later this month. So we've been making a lot of progress with 40 new issues. So starting out real quickly, I'm just going to run through these very quick. We have the keyboard shortcut Control A to select all layers. We can now use the arrow keys to nudge layers around the viewport, and then also the viewport navigation works. So you can pan, rotate, pan, rotate, zoom, and then scroll with the arrow keys. Scroll with the scroll wheel. We've also got a fill and eyedropper tools, so you can select the color of a layer and replace that layer with replace the color of different layers with the active color. We now have the ability to close all documents, and also now whenever you close documents, it displays a prompt asking you to confirm or if you want to save the file first. We have full screen exclusive input, so basically the browser doesn't give you access to certain keyboard shortcuts like Control W to close the window or Control Tab to change tabs. But if you're in full screen mode, there's an API specifically in Chrome that allows you to do this. So if you're in Chrome, you can go full screen and you can actually use all the keyboard shortcuts that you want. There's viewport scroll bars and rulers, so you can now see those, and then they will be hooked up soon. We've got options bar that follows the tool. So what that means is that as you change your tool, you see different options dependent upon the tool in the options bar. So for example, the Ngon shape tool allows you to specify the number of polygons. If you want, by default as a hexagon, but you can also change that to different numbers of in for Ngons. And we've got thumbnails for the layers now, so those show up in the layer panel. We have rearranging layers with hotkeys. So you can actually change them, move their position up and down in the stack. We've got the ability to flip and align shapes now. We can drag select layers around the canvas. That's important. The number input widget is a lot more awesome now. It's much more polished. We have the opacity and blend mode working now as well for different layers. We have a dialog that shows when features are coming soon. So if you click on a button and it's not available yet, it'll pop up a dialog telling you that, and it'll even sometimes say what the issue number is on GitHub if you're interested in going and adding the feature yourself. Page 2, we have new APIs to allow for nested transforms. That's really important to be able to add a lot of features that were requiring the ability to work between different transform spaces. We have Control 0 now to pan and zoom around, or basically Control 0 allows you to frame the artwork. It'll zoom and pan so that it covers your artwork, covers your screen. Now also that is the case for SVGs. Previously it was just assuming that you had a 1920 by 1080 canvas around the origin, but now it actually centers your artwork that gets exported around the actual bounds of the artwork. And that's because we have an infinite canvas still, although we will soon be switching from infinite canvas to an option between infinite canvas and a bounded canvas. We now also have project directories that were restructured to simplify the overall layout of the project. So that helps with simpler code and hopefully will make it more accessible to new contributors, such as potentially yourself, if you're listening to this. We also have fixed collision detection against the Bezier shapes. Previously, they were a little bit wonky when they were not using primitive shapes. And now we also have the ability to save and open Graphite documents. And finally, we have improved input redirection from JavaScript to Rust, as well as finally a bonus of bounding block selection around the layers. So let's give this a go. If at any point you're able to go to editor.graphite.design and you're able to use what is currently on master, and that gets updated on a pretty much daily basis. So now let's move over here, and what we can start out with, I'll just delete this, and yeah. So going through that list really quickly again, but now actually demoing the features. So when we have different layers, we can now hit Control A to select them all. You can also see now there's a bounding box surrounding the layers. Currently the bounding box does not disappear, but it will pretty soon. That'll just be a quick bug fix. And then also now we can nudge the layers around. So if you select one, you can now use the shift arrow key to move by 10 pixels, or just the regular arrow key to move by 1 pixel. You can also drag to move the selection around now. We have, let's see, we can now pan around the document, scroll to zoom. We can increase the rotation or decrease the rotation with this widget, with that number input. We can zoom here. We can also rotate like this and smoothly scroll up and down to zoom. And okay, next we can choose a different color and then go to the fill tool here and fill this with that color. You could even do it with transparency. And then you can, let's say, make a different shape. And then we want to select this color. So we can go to the eyedropper tool, grab that color, and then go to the fill tool and fill different shapes with the selected color. Now, if I wanted to close this document, it's actually going to ask if I want to save it or discard. So I'm actually going to go ahead and save it. And this is untitled document.graphite. And now, if I close this, I'm just going to discard it, and I'm going to go File Open. Then we can go to untitled document.graphite, and we actually reopen the document that we had open. Oh, it's a little weird. Yeah, and then you can close it and finally discard. You can also at any point go to File, Save. So File, Save, and that'll save it, or you can export, and this does the export to SVG. And now, now that this exported file will actually show the correct bounds, so the SVG will only be bounded around the artwork instead of being bounded around 1920 by 1080. Let's see, we have full screen exclusive input. So we're now in full screen mode, which allows us to actually access keys like Control W, Control Tab. So if I make several new documents, also Control N. So I can just hit Control N and then use tabs to switch around here. If I exit full screen mode, then Control Tab is going to move between tabs in the browser because you can't access that. But in full screen now that works. And also, even if you hover over the shortcuts, it'll have a question mark, and you hover over that question mark, it says this hotkey is reserved by the browser, but becomes available in full screen mode. We now have the option bar. So if you see these options here, these are different buttons that you can use when you're using the select tool. But now if we go to the shape tool, we have a hexagon, but we can now turn that hexagon into an octagon or into a triangle or even into a pentagon. And that all now works as well. And it basically, the options bar follows the tool that you have selected. We can now align shapes. So we can select all these shapes, or else just select these two. And then we can align to the top or align to the bottom or center align. Or we can just align them all to the center. Let's just close some of these tabs. And whoops. And do a quick alignment demo. If we now select all these, and then we can actually also flip. So we can rotate the selection, or flip or mirror the selection. And then as well, we can do alignment like that. A little bit buggy still, but that will be worked out. We
just
now
need
have
to send the update layer box upon clicking those buttons. It's yeah, I forgot.
very simple. We now actually have rulers at the top. So if you notice at the top, we have, it might be hard to see on the small screen share resolution, but we have rulers that show little marks every 100 pixels and with labels and everything. And then on the side, we have scroll bars. The scroll bars still have to be hooked up, but that's almost complete now as well in a different branch. We now have, let's see, thumbnails for the layers. So as you draw, in fact, you can see the thumbnail on the right. That shows up nicely. We have, let's see, we can then also rearrange layers with hotkeys. So if we make a stack of several layers on top of each other, now we can actually increase and decrease the, well, I guess for some reason it exits full screen mode. But we can increase and decrease the height of the layer that is selected. And that's also available from the layer order menu here as well. Let's see, we also have blend mode as an opacity now, which is really cool. So if we go and change this opacity to 50%, then we can see it becomes half transparent or 0%. Let's go back to 100% here and now change the blend mode to multiply. and now we see it does this. Or it can go to screen, and it does this. Or it can go to hue, and it changes based upon the hue of it, or the luminosity. So you can choose between all the different blend modes that you're used to, and that is a very cool feature. If we click on a button that does not exist, so for example, the ability to import is not available yet, it says coming soon, this feature is not implemented yet. Or if we try and change the snapping to be off, then it'll actually give us a issue number 200, and that links to the actual issue on GitHub. So if you click on that, you'll be able to actually go and implement this feature for us. Let's see. I think that is all of the first page changes. We now move on to the second page, and we can actually hit Control-0 to. Oh, that didn't work. Normally that would work. There we are. Not sure why it didn't work the first time. So hitting Control-0 frames the artwork in the viewport at basically the full size that it fits. And let's see. We can now actually click on. Well, normally we would be able to click on. Yeah, here we are. We can click on. Oh, okay. I guess it's not working. I'll move on to the next one, and then a few bugs to iron out still.
Yeah,
We can
you
save.
might actually it'd be best to switch to master for now because yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It deletes some layers, and now there are some phantom layers, and that messes up a bunch of things.
Yeah. We were using the branch that includes the bounding blocks around the selection because we did not quite get that ironed out with all the bugs yet, but seems that master is more stable now. So for example, we can do alignments without it breaking this time. And now we can actually click reliably around the edges of a hexagon. Previously, that was buggy because of the way that selecting against arbitrary Bezier curves. This is a Bezier curve, even though it's just a polygon. And then now it's possible to actually drag outside with your mouse outside of the canvas. Previously, that didn't work. So if I release it here, then it actually ends up here. Previously, you had to move your mouse only within the viewport canvas bounds. In fact, you can even drag outside the browser window. Still will keep following. And I believe that is everything for this week, for this month. So going back real quick to the presentation. I just want to quickly welcome some of our new team members here. We've had, I believe, 6 people join us this week, or this past month. So if you're interested in contributing and having your name added to this list next month, please join us. We have a lot of issues that are nicely cataloged in our issue system on GitHub, and a lot of them are easily approachable for newcomers. So please help contribute. And finally, we are announcing the release of Graphite 0.1 this month. Or at least this upcoming sprint within the next month. We're aiming for an end of August release, if that goes well. And basically what the features that we need to release are would be the ability to snap to different shapes when you're dragging around. So you would have vertical or horizontal lines that show you the alignment between shapes, as well as the ability to sorry, let me pull up this. Yeah, the ability to draw paths with the pen tool and or Bezier curve paths, not just polygon paths with the pen tool, as well as the ability to change the properties of any shape that is in your layer panel. That will allow you to change the color, the stroke width, all the different kinds of display settings that go along with the shapes. And then also the path tool allows you to drag Bezier points around and manipulate existing shapes. We need to work on the properties panel in general, as well as the, let's see. We need to fix the undo system, and then that will be the entirety of the main features that we need to release in the coming month. And then we'll be releasing basically Graphite 0.1 is the minimum viable product of vector editing. And then moving on from there, we will be implementing the node graph for Graphite 0.2, and that will be the minimum viable product for a graph-based vector editing system. So this is a layer-based, purely destructive editing system. And then moving on beyond that, probably by the end of this year, we'll have 0.2 available for node-based editing. So that'll be really cool. We build an entire node graph engine, and then over the coming over next year, 2022, we'll have raster editing as well. So be excited for Graphite 0.1. And with that said, are there any questions?
All right, so I'm gonna try to keep it short on question, just in the effort of time. But we do have a few on Twitch and a few in Discord. So one of the ones I'm kind of interested in, someone asked, "Is there UI scaling I can adjust?"
Yeah, you could just use your browser's UI scaling by just using. I think we're actually intercepting the Control+ and Control- keys, but if you just go to your browser's options, the options for your tab, then you can increase and decrease the scale.
All right, yeah, I like. I think that's like a pretty good accessibility one. And then, I think another one. Someone asked, "What UI framework are you using?" Or like what the state of that is at this point, I suppose.
Yeah, we're currently using Vue. The reason that we chose to use the web at all is because Rust unfortunately does not have a sufficiently powerful GUI framework available to us at the moment that will be able to allow us to rapidly prototype as we both build the UI and also experiment with the UX and basically make design decisions as we go. We needed to be able to rapidly prototype, and the web is really good for that. However, once we have a good feel for what the editor is going to end up looking and feeling like in the end, we'll be able to then invest the time, probably later next year, into switching over from web and completely deprecating this code base and replacing it with a purely native solution. We're looking at several different libraries like Druid, as well as potentially making our own if it becomes necessary. And then that, whatever we end up choosing, will compile to WASM still and be able to publish for the web by drawing basically in a full screen canvas where the entire GUI ends up in the full screen canvas of the web page. So we still always want to have the publishing platform of the web as one of the supported platforms, as well as Windows, Mac, and Linux, and potentially iPads in the future if that works out, as our different publishing platforms.
Yeah, super cool. And then I suppose sort of extension on that is when it comes to sort of like the real-time collaboration and editing and stuff like that. So I've used Figma quite a lot, and it's like really like you can really feel like you're working with a team and stuff like that. And do you feel that you're restricted right now by maybe like if you're doing everything in Vue, but are you using WASM right now?
Yeah, so all of our code is written in
Okay.
basically most of the code is written in Rust, and that gets compiled from WASM into what ultimately gets exposed as a bunch of different JavaScript functions.
Yeah.
And then we
Okay.
have a small amount of JavaScript on the front end that basically interacts with the JavaScript APIs and interacts with Vue. Vue.js is the web framework that we're using, and that keeps all the data up to date and displays everything.
And so I suppose in the form of when you're interacting with someone else and you're working with someone else in Graphite, do you find that you're restricted at all by the temporary framework that you're using, or do you feel like maybe redoing parts of it in the future will allow for like really native feeling like Figma is?
Yeah, so the collaborative editing shouldn't really have any problems with the current design decisions that we have regarding our usage of web-based technologies. That should work perfectly fine with collaborative editing. There are some things that we'll need to eventually have the full desktop editor to be able to work. Mostly that will be the custom render engine that we're going to have to write in the future. That'll be called Charcoal, and that render engine is going to be used for both vector and raster editing, and rendering all of those. And in fact, that framework actually will, sorry, that render engine itself will actually be a library that people can use so that they can render Graphite documents that they export, and use that in their games, for example. So they can use it as a library or a crate and import it, and then that library will be able to render in real time at any resolution or providing any custom data into the document. So if you have custom information that needs to be rendered at runtime in your game, then that will allow you to render that. So all of that system is going to require the native system, but we're not that limited by the front end at the moment being web-based. But we do want to replace that front end with a front end that I think we're choosing to call Diamond. That will be the native resolution. Sorry, the native client front end. We're kind of naming all of the different modules after different allotropes of carbon.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. I love
Graphite,
charcoal. Yeah.
We have charcoal, which is the render engine. Graphene is the graph-based engine. That will be what we're working on in 0.2 after this month's release, and then also the Graphite editor. That's like the front end of everything. That's just going to be called Graphite, as well as the entire ecosystem is also just called Graphite.
And also, we have a web server, Nanotubes.
Yes, Nanotube will be the web server that powers the collaborative editing.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thank you for all the updates on Graphite, and I'm excited to see what we have next month.
Definitely. Thank you.
All right, so next up we have Ekton, who's going to be giving us some updates on where Cosmic Verge is at.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, it's been 2 months since I last presented, and I'm flying solo this month. Daxped has been having some ongoing internet connection issues, which has been both hampering his ability to actually get work done, as well as his ability to confidently say that he could be here to present today. So I'm going to give a little bit of an update about what he's been working on, but you'll understand why I won't go too in depth when we get to that slide. So first, what is Cosmic Verge? It is my passion project, which is a 2D systematic sandbox MMO. It is very early in development in the sense that the concept is so early that what you're going to hear at the end is that I'm considering essentially rewriting it on top of this new oxidation phase that I said 2 months ago that I was nearing the end of, but I'm still not there yet. So this is the overall architecture, which is why I'm still not quite there yet. We renamed our database engine, which you'll see on the next slide as well. And we've been working on a GUI framework, which I'm not going to say will be good enough for Graphite. We're aiming for very specifically what we're hoping to achieve for Cosmic Verge, and it's hard to support other people and try to achieve this big goal all at the same time. So we're kind of off on our own doing this little thing. If people want to use it, that's great. The green things are mostly new libraries, although I realized that technically I talked about GUI briefly last time, so it's not fully new. But we introduced a new math library that replaces Euclid for us for just various reasons for screen display and some other kind of opinion-based things that I had for just implementing our APIs. So on the database front, we did quite a bit back in June. I added at-rest encryption, unique views, WASM client support, which I'll show off in a little bit, custom APIs, which I'll also show off in a little bit, the ability for multiple users to log in so that we'll be able to actually get Cosmic Verge up and running with multi-user support. And then I also took some time to explore a new serialization format that is named POT after the idea of planting a bonsai tree in it. It's a fully self-describing format that is, in general, more compact than Seaboard. That's at the expense of being slightly slower than Seaboard, but it is way faster than JSON still. And then if you don't do anything to change the settings with bin code, we technically are more compacted than it as well, but it does have variable integer encoding. So all these statements should be taken with a grain of salt, as I'm trying to say, because I don't want the responsibility of claiming some benchmark and then being proven wrong. So it's not fully integrated yet, but it's pretty close. And then on the GUI front, we made a lot of significant updates to the point that there's no way that I can list all of the changes because we're so early. There's no changelog yet. So the biggest ones that we have are that we actually honor dark and light mode, and that's all done with kind of a cross with a theming engine that supports the idea of setting both light and dark colors as you go along. And we added a canvas widget so that you can write cross-platform drawing code that is rendered both in a browser as well as on a native WGPU app. And then we've been working on, but didn't finish up grid and basic text input, although my text input that I'm resurrecting from my old Clujan game engine technically supports rich text, but this particular input that I'm aiming for is purely for text entry and password entry, as you can imagine writing a login screen needs. We updated our ecosystem to WGPO 0.9, which was completely painless. It sounds like 10 might be a little bit more of an adventure, but I'm looking forward to it. And as I mentioned before, we replaced our algebra system. On the custodian front, which is what DaxPeta has been working on, this is what we use to power our password login for BonsaiDB. He has been contributing to the opaque and PKCS 11 ecosystems, which has been mostly upstream. So he actually did a curve implementation of P256 for opaque. He added HSM support and a bunch of other crazy stuff, which the end goal is not just like password logins. The PKCS stuff is thinking about some of the end-to-end encryption features that we want to support, which kind of goes to how crazy we are in terms of our ambitions for this project. So what's next? So in the next month, we're going to be trying to finish up the grid and input implementations, all with the goal of creating the sign up and login forms, using GUI. We have the canvas with basic image support, so we're ready to kind of get something drawing again in this framework. So the only thing that's keeping me from wanting to really show it all off is HTTPS for BonsaiDB, which is how everything's being powered. And that's just preventing us from deploying it. And I know that I could technically stand up, something in front of it and use, basically terminate the SSL in front of it, but I really want it to be pure Rust, and I'm looking forward to WGPU moving us towards that as well. So yeah, that's pretty much what's next. Here's some links. I will copy and paste a few of these into chat so that they can get pasted into the announcements. But I'm open to any questions.
All right, and just taking a look and
Oh wait,
seeing.
I was going to show off stuff. I forgot.
Oh yeah, go for it. Sure.
Yeah, I totally forgot that I was actually going to show things. So this is the very simple demo that has a button that's powered with BonsaiDB. This is an example though, so it's kind of meant to be simple. And as you can see, when you click on either side, one is a browser, one is a WGPU app. They both count up. So that's a very simple example. But this is showing off the custom API feature. So you just need any serializable data structure for your request and your server response, and then you tie it together with this trade implementation. And then let's take a look at the server first. You end up these little macros here are something that we're called the actionable framework. It allows you to do a bunch of permissions-based stuff. This example doesn't actually have any of it, but if you do use it, you basically implement these dispatcher traits that get generated for you. So this is how you implement the get counter endpoint and the increment counter endpoint. And then the client on the other side, when it does the increment counter, it actually has a client which has that example API trait, specified in there. And it sends the increment counter request, and when it gets it back, it asks for the widget in a mutable state, and then sets the label to the string value. So that is how that particular example works. And then the only other thing that I had to show off was just like we're very early on in the development, but part of what we did was I set up a little bit of a way to generate these PNGs, animated PNGs, showing off the frameworks. So as we build more stuff, we're going to just kind of build more examples and try to show off all the features. This also allows us to do unit tests too, which is kind of fun. So that is everything.
All right. So in chat, I don't think we have any questions, but I have a few of my own because I love sort of what you're working on with this massive just ecosystem of distributed systems for game development.
Yeah.
And I think that this is super exciting. And I think Embark released something earlier this month called like Quilkin or something like that, which is essentially like a UDP reverse proxy that you can use for game servers and stuff like that. And it got me thinking again about all these cool distributed system ideas where if you're running like a game with an arbitrary amount of players, how can you distribute it better and stuff like that. And it's really awesome to see that you're going into that, like further and further into that ecosystem. But one thing I'm sort of wondering about is
Well, let me clarify one thing though.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that we're not actually aiming to do too much distributed. We do want the idea that everyone's playing in one ecosystem, but as much theory crafting as we can come up with, we can't really think of a good way that when you end up wanting people that are in Japan and the US to be able to go and to play in the same location, there's not really a great way to handle that ability without at some point saying you're all going to experience the same latency if you all go to the same location. And so once you make that concession, what benefits are there to distributing it? So if someone can prove that argument wrong for us, we would love to embark on that idea of distributing it, but we can't come up with a technical reason why to at the moment. So,
or like a design reason why, do you mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like what's the actual benefit of doing it?
Yeah. Now, I think what I mean by distributed more isn't necessarily geolocation distributed, but rather if I have one server that I'm running all of the game server on, then I'm limited by how many CPUs and RAM I can push into that server. But I think the gist I've gotten is if you have like 20 servers, then you could really make use of this, and you could just be bombarding it with like millions of players and just scale up in like that sort of horizontal way in a data center. Is that sort of the right impression?
We hope.
Yeah.
Oh. I mean, obviously, that claim is always going to be subject to what types of load you're throwing at it, right?
Exactly.
So, you still have to intelligently design the systems you're going to put on that to make it work that way. But the goal is that if you design your systems in such a way that they could scale that way, that this can allow you to scale that way. Yes.
Yeah. So I think I've talked to some other people in the Rust Gamedev ecosystem about this idea, and I think one of the other ones, I forget the game name, but I believe their name is Chinedu, and they were working on sort of this like similar to RuneScape type of adventure game, and coming up with ideas on how this could be distributed to multiple servers and stuff like that. And I'd love to see a game in Rust that really took this to the next level, where like depending on the workloads that had to be done for like real-time games, kind of just seeing it. I mean, if you just look at the graph that you showed off with all these like systems working together, I think that you're already going in with like a lot of architectural ideas on how it can work at like different scale than just stuff in memory. And so I'm definitely excited to see where Cosmic Verge goes in the next few months.
Yeah, well, thank you.
All right, so that is the end of our show and tell for today, but we do have some pretty exciting announcements. So first off, we have Alham here to talk to us about the Rusty Jam.
Hello, hello. So we've been in the Rust game development for quite a while, and you can see the progress on our games yet website. So I was on Reddit one day and was checking out the Rust Reddit subreddit, and there was a friend of mine called Energelis. He gave an idea on about a Rust game jam. So we got together and set up an itch page, itch.io page, and basically starting the unofficially first Rust game development game jam. So it's all about because it's the first game jam in Rust language. We're planning on to keep it more general. So you're allowed to have like your own libraries and like engines, anything you want, or any platform. But there is a team, and the theme will be announced like a week after. So the game jam is mostly about using the Rust game development itself. So the plan is we have like 3 weeks of planning here. The week of submissions starts a week after today, which is after the announcement. Until then, you can join our Discord server, which there you can join up and meet other people and build up your teams. After that, the submission starts, and then you'll have the theme of the game jam. And don't worry, it's a theme that you would expect, but it will not tell it until then. So it's a surprise until then. And during a week, you'll have time to build the game itself and have like submit it. But your submissions will be hidden until a week after the submission started. So that would be like the start of the third week, which you will not be able to submit after that. And that time the voting system starts, which there will be mostly 4 factors in play, which is your graphics, the gameplay, the theme, how your game use the theme, and the music of your game. So be sure to check all those boxes there, and you'll be rated according to that score. After there will be a week long of rating, and after that, at the end of the week, at the exactly midnight, the the results will be announced and then. So basically, what is allowed? So you're allowed to use only Rust and not any other language in your game code. So that means no unsafe code. I know unsafe code is also in Rust, but you're not allowed to use unsafe code. Just purely safe Rust in your game code. You are allowed to use other crates like other game engines, BV or MSS or even SDL, which do have unsafe code. You're allowed to use them, but not in your game code. Also, be sure to not copy your code and make it a crate to get the impression of, oh, I'm not using unsafe code in my game code. No, we're gonna check that. And the other requirement is your code to be open source open, not open source, so that everyone can check out on how well you implemented the game and if you're violating a rule or not. If you did, your submission will be deleted. If you didn't, you can proceed to the voting. And that was basically the only requirement. So to recap, you have 1 week of submission, and during that time you are only allowed to use Rust and only safe Rust code. And the reason we are not using unsafe is because the theme of the game, you'll know about why it is when the theme is announced. So it all checks out until then. So it's for like surprise for now, just make sure to gather your team on our server. We have a Discord server, which I'll write the link below in a bit. You can take the jam page as well and build up your team. We're excited to see all the games that you guys will make. We're especially excited to see the major game engines that are written in Rust, like Amethyst, Bevy, RG3D, and also the engine that was announced today. We're also excited to see that. This can also be a good experience to learn more about Rust or how like implement your own engines or something. You're allowed basically, but just let's see how it all goes at the end. And we're just excited about that. Is there any question?
I think the biggest question is definitely around the like why no unsafe Rust, but if you say it's based on the theme, then we can leave it like that for now. I think so. We are starting on the 20th of August, so in 6 days, right?
Yes, yes. And 7 days, actually, like not
6 days, 3 hours.
counting, not counted days.
Oh, okay, yeah. And so, yeah, I think this is a super awesome initiative to see, and I think there have been some game dev or some jams in Rust like related to maybe like Legion. I think that there was one for that, and I think Bevy's looking at doing one coming up. But I love this type of initiative of like just the entire Rust language, and so let's yeah, I think let's see what comes of this, and hopefully we can get more game jams out there where people are using some of the awesome frameworks that are already there or just working on their own stuff. But yeah, perfect. Thank you very much for that, Elham.
Yes, yes, I'm excited as well.
All right. So next up, I'm just going to discuss the Rust Gamedev podcast, in which we are looking at releasing a new episode on Monday. And so we've been on a bit of a hiatus from releasing episodes, but we're going to try to step back into episodes about 1 month at a time for now. And then once we have a queue of several that are ready to go, we might look at doing bi-weekly. But yeah, we really want this to be an opportunity to get back into talking to some cool people about Rust. So look for that on Monday. I'll probably been announcing it in several different servers. Also, the Gamedev newsletter is out for July. So go take a look at gamedev.rs, and you can read about all of the awesome development that has been going on. Yes, and the cross-team collaboration fun times is happening, I believe. Nico said August 30th. And there's gonna be a really cool panel this time where several different members from different working groups are going to be talking about some items related to like community and how their ecosystems are going and stuff like that. And we've also been talking about how it would be really awesome to get some type of report that like just sort of describes the state of each ecosystem. And so I know we're looking at doing like the game dev working group, I think embedded, the crypto working group, the blockchain working group. And so I think this is a really awesome opportunity to see just like how other working groups are doing in Rust and what kind of stuff they're working on. So keep an eye out for that. I think if you go to the cross team collaboration fun times, you can see when the event comes up. And now, okay, so that's the end of that. All right, so let me just swap over. I'll do this in real time. Demo questions, and let me change. Okay, yeah. Let's change this to. Oh, I didn't know it would do that quick, so I got to get it right on the first try, so I don't dox myself in my email. Let's see. Okay, Carla. So I wanted to just point this out. The reason we did not have technical difficulties, or as many, during this this meetup was because True Doctor helped me like half an hour before the meetup started to get all of this set up. But the benefit of this, which we're gonna try to do together in real time here, is I'm going to be playing a video in Chrome, but I want to stream it back to Discord, which might already work, just because I know Linux just added something recently where, or I think Discord added something where you're able to hear Discord. But let me just play it, and I just want to see if anybody on Discord, can you hear this? Is that audible on Discord? No sound? Okay, perfect. So let's do this the cool way. All right, but I think it is playing the. Oh man, I have 4 monitors, but it's so difficult to remember where I put stuff. Okay, it's over here. Okay, so I am streaming the right thing. That's good. But now we need to go back to Carla here. All right, let's give this a go. So I need. Where is Chrome at? So this is Discord. Oh, so I guess this is a technical difficulty part. Or maybe it's just because there isn't any audio playing through here right now. Oh yeah, Google Chrome. Oh yeah. All right, let's go like this and like this. Oh, wait. On Discord, are you able to hear that now? Wait, can you hear that? I just want to check. Yeah, you can hear it? Yeah? Okay, perfect. So now we can watch a 1010 video while people can watch it on Discord and on Twitch. Oh, but I also need to make sure that this goes to like Jack, I think. And let me just check again. Uh-oh. So what's going on here? Oh no, what's happening? Maybe do I need to leave it playing while...
Bye bye Unity.
Okay, now we are good. So technical difficulties are this time is purely just because I didn't know what I was doing. Okay, perfect. So now if I transition the screen back to not Google Slides, maybe it's Google Slides. Yeah, all right. So like last time, we're going to do another 1010 outro. I love 1010's videos, and he's been doing a lot of stuff in Rust recently, and so I think it's a great way to finish off. And so thank you everybody for coming out, and we will see you next month.
What happens when you spend a full month only optimizing your voxel engine? Well, it becomes really fast. Bye bye Unity! Hello, Rust! Rust.
You see, I was making this voxel game with Unity, but my interest in the Rust programming language made me want to see if making this game without a game engine was a viable option. Today, a huge milestone was reached. The world generation performance is now competitive to the